It's okay not to be perfect with finances. Experian is your big financial friend and here to help. Did you know you can get matched with credit cards on the app? Some cards are labeled No Ding Decline, which means if you're not approved, they won't hurt your credit scores. Download the Experian app for free today. Applying for No Ding Decline cards won't hurt your credit scores if you aren't initially approved. Initial approval will result in a hard inquiry, which may impact your credit scores.
Experian. Unfiltered discussions. Unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello, happy Monday. Hope you had a nice Halloween. Lots to cover, so here's what you're going to learn on tonight's show. Mars, the red planet. It once had lakes that steamed away into history, and we've just found evidence of it. Evidence of a warmer, wetter red planet. So we're going to dive in 10 minutes' time. I mean, we're not going to dive into the Martian water because it's not there anymore. After that, with interest rates lowering, should you buy more than you can afford? No, you shouldn't. So how to build real wealth? We'll discuss that with an economics expert halfway through the hour. That's just some of the show. That's just some of what you'll learn. Let's dive in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
The torrent of torrids, fireballs in the sky. It's a meteor shower that's kind of happening now, and we're going to discuss it and what it means for the future, because it's kind of cool stuff. We're here with Dr. Sarah Rugheimer, who's an astrophysicist. She works at the University of Edinburgh, and check out her Audible original titled Searching for Extraterrestrial Life. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
If I want to see a meteor shower on top of my building in New York, is probably not the best place to see it, right?
No, you need a dark sky, and even the moon's light can make them really hard to see. So you want to kind of be out in the country and then be observing when the moon is not in the sky.
So tell me about this torrid meteor shower. It happens but once a year around Halloween. It's super spooky, but there's some indication that in the next, 7 years, 11 years, things could get a little rough with this meteor shower.
Yes, so this torrid stream happens every year around late October, early November, so it's often called the Halloween fireballs, and it emanates from Taurus in the sky, from the constellation Taurus, the bull. And there's a model, we don't know if this is true yet, but it could be a lot stronger in 2032 and 2036. Creating a higher chance of like a fireball or an air burst in our atmosphere. Now, this is a very small risk that anything would actually happen in a very harmful way, so this is a very low probability, slightly increasing.
When you say fireball or air burst, that sounds fun, but these can actually be dangerous. That's when there's so many objects hitting our atmosphere, they can like burn down stuff, and it's happened before.
Yes, so the most notable airburst is the Tunguska airburst in 1908. This was in Russia, and it just flattened something like 2,000 square meters in Siberia. So it hit in Siberia. Not a lot of people were impacted. I think there were 3 deaths. But like if that were to hit a city, it would be a disaster.
It's like almost biblical. I mean, maybe this is what the old, religious stories are based on. Some air burst that happened 5,000 years ago and people not understanding what it was.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd recommend the interested listener go to the Tunguska Wikipedia page and read some of the accounts that we have from people who were there. I mean, they do sound apocalyptic, huge bursts of thunder. The brightness was brighter than the sun. They had to turn away. It was so bright. This object, and of course a lot of destruction around.
And how can this happen? We'll just pass through this group of rocks that are out there, and we'll pass through a patch of it that has too many rocks for our atmosphere to handle and break up, so that they kind of hit through. Why this year is it just a pretty thing to look at around Halloween, but in 7 or 11 years it could be potentially dangerous?
Yeah, so in meteor showers, these are usually just kind of small rocks that burn up in our atmosphere. They pose really no threat to us. We see them, kind of wish upon a star in a dark night sky. It's usually a fun occasion. Really, what determines whether it's dangerous or not is how big the incoming object is. So if it's very large, it's not going to get burned up fully in our atmosphere and make impact, right? So think, the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. That was a much bigger object, wiped out those big reptiles and gave rise to us mammals. So that's like the most extreme case. And, there's always a frequency of chance for any object to be more threatening or less threatening. Most of them are not threatening. And we try to keep an eye on any of the extinction level asteroids. That's, why we have these tracking devices and telescopes looking for anything that could cause a lot of harm. But basically what's happening here is this stream of meteors that we cross through on our orbital path Jupiter has a resonance with it, and think of Jupiter like a border collie. It's just shepherding all of these together a little bit more. So there's a higher concentration of them in 2032 and 2036. And so that's this like gravitational resonance with Jupiter is what would cause the higher number of them, which could increase the chance that one of them is harmful.
Interesting. So Jupiter's gravity well sort of pulls in or shapes them in a way where they clump together a little more. And if we pass through that clump, there's a small chance of a firestorm.
Yeah, very small. I'm not spending any time being worried about this. I'm much more worried about, anything else happening on our planet right now.
Fair enough. Let's go to this next story. Astronomers have found a hidden moon, a quasi-moon. What does this mean? Is it just a small rock in orbit around the sun, but it's small enough but big enough to be excited about it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a small rock that we didn't know about, and it's in our orbit, so it's kind of like trailing us around the sun. So it's not orbiting us like the moon, right? And it's really tiny. Actually, it's only 100 feet across. Oh. It's just a super little small rock ball, but it is close to us. So this actually means that it could be a potential target for, say, trying out asteroid mining. So asteroid mining is, why would we even care to go to asteroids? Well, basically, a lot of the rare precious metals on Earth, they're heavier and they've sunk to our core. So there's a less abundance of them near the surface. But on asteroids, that's not true. These objects are not big enough to have gravity pull everything inside. So you have there's a higher abundance of those rare precious metals at the surface, which is why we would even consider doing that.
We might start calling the rare earth metals common asteroid metals. Is that,
that would be a good name. You should definitely run with that.
Speaking of names, who gets to name these objects when they're discovered? Like this space rock trailing the Earth, would it be the people who discover it? Like, what do we call this thing?
Yeah, there are different naming conventions depending on how the object is found. Usually it has something to do with the year and the sort of observatory that found it and what number it is in this year. So this one is 2025 PN7. With the other object we just talked about that's been in the news a lot was 3I Atlas, right? It's the third interstellar object found by the Atlas Observatory. So if you're prominent enough, you can have an asteroid named after you. That's kind of fun. But usually they're just given a boring numerical name that has something to do with the year, the observatory, and what number it is.
I would be remiss if we didn't at least ask you about 3I Atlas. Is it still hanging out behind the sun, unable to see it? We're hoping to see it pop out the other side, completely launched with its alien capsules, ready to go, ready to take over the solar system in maybe a few months.
Exactly. If that happens, we'll talk before our incoming destruction. But yes, it's still behind the sun. We won't be able to see it again until the end of November or maybe even early December. And at that point, I presume it'll still be behaving very comet-like. But if it's not, we'll know at that point, and then I'll eat my hat if I'm wrong. But I'm thinking it's a comet.
You'll eat your hat? Okay.
I'll I'll take out a hat and I'll eat it for you on camera for your viewership.
Thank you. Sarah Rugheimer's book can be found on audible.com. It's an Audible original. Is that even a book? I don't even know. But it's called Searching for Extraterrestrial Life. Sarah, it is always a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, billions of years ago, Mars had lakes that steamed away into space history. NASA's Curiosity rover just uncovered clues about that. Clues of a warmer, wetter red planet. We'll dive in, not literally into the water on Mars, because it's not there anymore, after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Keep listening to The Last Show with David Cooper, because the alien invasion can wait. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Mars, the red planet. It once had lakes, like real ones, not just sci-fi images. New research from NASA's Curiosity rover reveals that they evaporated. Goodbye. But a study offers an early glimpse into the planet's lively past. And I'm here with someone who's worked on that. She works as a researcher in planetary chemistry at Caltech and a research scientist with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Is it laboratory or laboratory? I never know. Her name is Dr. Amy Hofmann. Amy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, David. Good to be here.
Is it laboratory or laboratory? You look like you had some opinion there.
Oh, it depends on whether you want to sound sophisticated or not, I think.
I guess I sound unsophisticated because I don't know. Okay, Mars. For those who haven't been following Mars research closely, what exactly is this new study trying to uncover about the Gale crater on the planet, and why is it significant?
Yeah, so this is a study from data from the Curiosity rover. Most people know about Percy, the Perseverance rover. That's the new one. And it's like, oh, we forgot about Curiosity. We're the old one. We've actually been operating on Mars for 13 years at this point. So, we're still going strong. We're investigating a place called Gale Crater. So this is a big impact crater on Mars. It's actually the lowest point on Mars for 1,000 kilometers in any direction. So when there was water flowing on Mars, and there were rivers, there were lakes, there might have even been an ocean over part of the planet way back in the day, it was all going to be flowing, at least in the local vicinity, as the watershed. And it was all flowing down into Gale. So we've got this lake on Mars, and there are lots of impact craters that are thought to have hosted lakes. Like I said, you got the new rover up there, fancy, exploring another lake.
Is there a bit of tension between the two teams? Side note?
No. We're all good. It's Mars, right? We love Mars. We're all Martians. It's just different, let's say. But we're still there. We're still doing our science, and but we're all looking at lakes, and we're interested in lakes because this notion of follow the water, where there's water. And you've got the right chemistry going on, the right minerals, the right temperatures, the right pH, not too acidic. You have the potential, a compellingly habitable environment. So this whole notion of, was there life on Mars? Was there the chemistry that got close to maybe life on Mars? Where you're going to go is the place where you can investigate whether there was water. And if there was water, then it gets really interesting.
By going out to our planetary neighbors, we can sort of get a glimpse of our own past, because those environments might have been similar to an early Earth where life sparked here.
Absolutely. That is exactly right. But Mars is like the Earth gone bad.
Oh.
Venus is its own Earth gone bad, and it might want to fight Mars for that title. But yeah, it's exactly right. Mars is super cool because it changed so early in its history. We're talking 3.5 billion years ago-ish, which is when life was just starting to grapple on and get a foothold on the Earth. Mars is going in the opposite direction, increasingly hostile environments for anything Earth life-like at that time. So we have all these rocks of early Mars, and it does provide us some indication of what was happening, what could have been happening on the early Earth.
Now, tell me about Oxygen 18. Is this oxygen that has just been allowed to vote? Why is it significant that you found it, and what does it tell us about the early water on Mars?
Voting, driving, it does all the things. No drinking, even though it's part of water. Yeah, so if you go back to like high school chemistry, we got atoms, right? Atoms make up everything, har har. In an atom, you've got protons, positively charged particles, and neutrons, neutral particles, like they have no charge in the nucleus. And you've got electrons, effectively negative particles orbiting that atom. All elements are defined by the number of neutrons, or sorry, the number of protons. Oh boy.
Oh boy,
In
you're in
their,
trouble
in their
now.
nucleus. Yeah, I'm in trouble now. So all oxygen has 8 protons and 8 electrons. So 8 negative charges, 8 positive charges. It's neutral. But not all oxygen. So in the nucleus, then you also have these neutrons. And 99% of all oxygen atoms have 8 neutrons. So 8 plus 8 in the nucleus is 16. But some oxygen atoms, very tiny fraction, 0.2%-ish, have extra neutrons in them, 2 extra neutrons. So it's oxygen 18. That just talks about the mass of the atom. So why do we care? So I like to tell people that I'm a forensic scientist. I just do like CSI solar system. This is me wanting to be Dana Scully back when I was a teenager and making it work with this career. And so if you think about sort of like, I don't know, the mass of a molecule, if you have water, it's H2O. Well, 99% of those water molecules will have an O16 in them, and a tiny fraction of them will be more than 99%, but a tiny fraction of them will be O18. And when you boil water on the stove, you do what we call in isotope chemistry fractionation. So you're boiling your water, you're putting energy into the water. It's easier to basically boil away, or just a cup of water sitting on the counter, evaporate those lighter molecules. So the oxygen 18, that water that has an oxygen 18, it hangs around. It's harder to put into the gas phase. And so that's that whole process, right? We're using the isotopes and the ratio of the number of water molecules that have a 16 and the number of water molecules that have an 18O in them. We can use that ratio to like tease out ancient processes that were happening on other planets. And it's not just Mars. We do this to all bodies in the solar system.
Now, what can the presence of it tell us? What can it tell us about the early conditions on Mars?
Yeah, so what it's telling us in this case, there's so much more oxygen 18 in the water that we extracted from minerals. So what we did was, Curiosity scoops up some rocks or powders up some rocks from the surface, dumps them in a cup. We heat up that powder and we get volatiles, gases coming off. And that's how we can measure the water that's actually bound in the clay minerals from Gale Crater. So these are clays that formed at the bottom of the lake, effectively. And when they form, they trap water. And so now we're looking at that like 3.7-ish billion-year-old water. And when we see that there's so much more of the oxygen 18 bearing water molecules, that tells us that the 16 oxygen, which should have been super abundant, it's gone. Well, where did it go? Well, the ratio of these 18 oxygen-bearing water molecules to 16 oxygen-bearing water molecules is so high, it's higher than anything we see terrestrially. And a lot of Mars is what we'd say oxygen isotope composition. So a lot of rocks, the CO2 in the atmosphere, everything looks Earth-like. This does not look Earth-like. The only thing that this isotopic signature looks like is evaporative environments on Earth. So we can think about, again, like analog environments. And so when we looked at this value, it was like, wow, this has to be a signature of something happening like evaporation because it's so big and it's so strong. But that was like a head scratcher, right? Because the minerals in those rocks don't look like the lake didn't evaporate to nothing, right? It's not like gone. It wasn't salt flats, but it was experiencing clearly changes, right? That whole lake environment was dynamically changing at a time earlier than we thought.
Well, it sounds pretty cool. Something like hydrothermal vents or geysers or something violent like that?
No, it's I know I used the analogy for boiling early on, but definitely not hot like that. Actually, like really cold. You'd need a dry suit, like the thicker wetsuits if you wanted to go in, because it was probably close to freezing. The water, it wasn't frozen. We have geologic evidence it wasn't frozen. But yeah, you might drink it. You could drink the water,
but you wouldn't want to take a swim.
No, you wouldn't want to take a swim.
Well, Amy, thanks for telling me about these this early Mars oxygen study. It's really cool stuff.
It's thanks, I appreciate it. It's the first data set we have of its kind for water like that we measured in Mars rocks on Mars, which is pretty exciting.
Well, Dr. Amy Hofmann is a researcher in planetary chemistry at Caltech and a research scientist with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Amy, thank you for joining me again.
Hey, thank you so much. It was fun. Thanks.
Next, interest rates are down. Does that mean you should buy more than you can afford? No. But how to build real wealth, that we'll give you tips for on the other side of the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
It's economics or economics news. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that word anymore. I'm here with Dr. Eric Kam, an economics professor from Toronto Metropolitan University, to ask the question, if I can't afford it, should I buy a second car? Eric, I think the answer to this question is yes. Also, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. If you can't afford it, the answer is no. It's been fun.
That's the end of the interview.
That's the end of the interview. No, listen, what's going on right now is actually a really interesting time. And I know that you'll hear a lot of economists on the radio talking about how the sky is falling. It's not falling. The problem is that we are in a cyclical downturn. But the economy is like the male anatomy. I tell my students, what goes up must come down. But then if you're lucky, it goes back up again. And right now we're in a downturn. And there's some positives with that. And people in Canada saw this week that the prime lending rate fell 25 basis points.
Free money. No, that's
well, not free, but it's tending in that direction. So the point is that what I think, and for those of us that grew up loving the TV show MASH, is that now is time for economic and financial triage. To really sit down, David, and figure out, what are my fixed expenses a month? What can I not scrimp on? But what is discretionary? And maybe now is the time, just to give you an example, that you pare back some of that discretionary spending, combined with, given that if you have a variable rate mortgage or you have a loan or a line of credit, that interest rate just fell. Don't take the extra money you're going to get because your payments are lower and spend them. How about take that money and either save it if you have the luxury or pay down your debt if your debt exists. And let me just say this before I take a breath. The debt ratio in Canada now is about 105%, which weekly means people owe more than they are worth. And so, maybe some people can use this time right now to reevaluate their financial lives. And that will really pay off for decades, David.
When you hear of people who are like, oh, my rate just went down, I'm paying less a month, I'm going to use that extra money to do something really stupid, like buy a second car. What do you say to people like that? Just smarten up? I'm reminded of this SNL skit from like 12 years ago where the husband's like, oh, like I'll just get another credit card. And the joke that they keep on repeating is don't buy what you can't afford. It's this really like simple sketch where they just keep on saying that advice as the husband tries to come up with different ways to get gadgets and cars and a house and spend money that he doesn't have. And it's kind of eerily relevant today. Is that the advice you give people who want to buy that second thing?
It's the advice you have to give people who want to buy that second thing. You have really got to entrench yourself and figure out what can you not live without. And those things you shouldn't live without. We have to feed our kids. They need shoes, and you probably need a car to get around. But when I see people making such stupid decisions, and two of them really come to mind. Number one is, and I never advocate on any radio show to go to the mafia for a loan. But David, if you're borrowing off of your credit card, you are. Because the real, or what we call effective interest rate on a credit card loan is about 30 to 35% now. So whether you go to your credit card or you go to the Gambino family, it really doesn't much matter. So that would be my number one thing. And yes, my number two thing is that just excess expenses, when they offer you money, when you go out in search of people who need money, here's an example, my aunt and uncle. They went out in search of a mortgage, and at the time, they needed $100,000. That sounds ridiculous today, but that's what they needed to borrow. The bank said, why don't you can borrow based on your credit $300,000. They said, amazing, I'll borrow the $300,000. They bought cars, they went on vacations, they gutted their house. And then you know what happened? They owed $300,000 on a salary that hadn't gone up, and they lost their house. And this is the disaster scenario when you have to look at your family and go, we have to move. Now, you're not going to tell your kids this, but when you have to look at your significant other and go, because we were stupid.
Yeah.
And the answers were almost apparent. My grandfather taught me when I was a kid, don't spend more than you have and take 10 cents out of every dollar and save it. These rules were smart in 1918. They're still smart today.
The banks will give you more, like if people think of the banks as the good guys. Oh, they're giving me a little bit of extra credit limit on my credit card, or they're offering me a mortgage that's more than what we had in mind. They're not the good guys. Like they will lend you as to the penny, the maximum they think that they can put you in this horrible cycle of spending all your income on that credit card debt, all that income on that mortgage. Don't take that maximum limit they give you, I think is the advice here.
Don't take the maximum limit. They are not your friends. They are profit maximizing institutions. They are loyal to their boards of directors and their shareholders. So no, the banks are not operating with you. I love the TV commercials. Let us work with you. Oh my Lord. They're not working with you. You take the minimum that you need in terms of being indebted. And by the way, you know what's really tragic? Now, some people are just in a situation where they have no choice in the short run. But some people think, I've got this thing figured out. I can run my credit card bill up as far as I want and just pay the minimum monthly and do this forever and I'm good. Again, that amount is creeping up so fast, you will be absolutely stunned when the amount that you think you owe doubles and triples in a very short period of time. You are on your own in this world when it comes to debt. The banks are not there to help you. They're not going to be there when you're insolvent. Now, by the way, there are companies that you can pay that are there to help you do things like consolidate your debt, or if you really are in trouble, they can contact your creditors and sometimes make deals where you pay 50 cents on the dollar. But how about we try in good faith to stop people from getting to that point by making better decisions earlier.
What about these 0% APR credit cards? I always worry about those. Like where you don't have to pay any interest on the balance for a year. And then boom, after that year comes, you've got thousands of dollars of debt, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And then you've got a 30% rate. What do you tell people about those?
Forget if it sounds too good to be true. If it sounds good, it's probably not. Because these companies are not there to make you wealthy. You can't get fooled by this. It's like when people go to there's a store in Toronto, I won't mention the name, but if you live here, you know it. They don't want you to pay up front. Don't pay for your washer and dryer or your stove or your couch. You can pay for it over 10 years. Of course, because you're borrowing their money. And they're charging you ridiculous amounts of interest to do it. But people convince themselves, well, why should I put out $5,000 today when I can pay $100 a month for the rest of my grandchildren's life? And that's ridiculous. You can't look at life like that. You can't look at planning horizons as forever. If it sounds like 0%, you don't have to pay, no money down, interest-free, I can tell you unilaterally, that is garbage. Run as fast as you can.
Yeah, if you're not in a position to pay off that thing when you get it, you're not going to be in a position to pay it off in a year when that percent goes from this promotional rate, 0 or whatever, to something very high. I had a friend trying to convince me this was a great way to buy a motorcycle a few years ago. And I'm like, in a year, you're going to be totally screwed.
Totally screwed. And I'll tell you what's going to, not just screwed, but you're going to lose your motorcycle when someone repossesses it, but you're still going to owe the money on it. So congratulations. Now someone once joked with me, instead of getting married, find a woman that you love and buy her a house.
No, that's Rod Stewart. Instead of getting married again, I'm just going to find another woman I don't like and buy her a house. It's a pretty sexist quote, but I do love it.
Right. Well, if you'd like to lose your financial wherewithal, find things you don't need and don't pay cash. because it's going to be the exact same result. You're going to wind up with nothing and lots of debt.
I've enjoyed this stream of consciousness odyssey where we're just telling people don't buy stuff you can't afford. Eric, it's always a pleasure having you on the show.
It's always an honor to be invited. Stay healthy, David.
Dr. Eric Kam, an economics professor at Toronto Metropolitan University. Up next, a sexual education topic. So parents with young children or sensitive listeners, you'll want to be advised. Here's what we're going to discuss. Have you ever zoned out during intimate activities? You know, thinking about groceries instead of your partner. Well, enter something called sexual mindfulness, being fully present in the bedroom. It might make things better for you. We'll give you details of it in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
State Senator Jennifer Carroll Foy here, asking you to vote for my friend, Ghazala Hashmi, for Lieutenant Governor. She's a lifelong educator who's fought to expand job training, and Ghazala wrote the bill protecting Medicaid from Trump and MAGA extremists. Join me in voting for Ghazala Hashmi for Lieutenant Governor and Democrats up and down the ballot. Paid for by Workers Vote, 212-265-7000. Not authorized by any federal candidate or federal candidates committee. Workers Vote is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
A lot happens to our bodies during sex, but a lot actually happens in our minds too, in our heads, and it's not always positives. Things like worries, anxieties, distractions, and expectations. So what if the key to better intimacy isn't physical, but mental? Let us explore that idea with researcher in clinical psychology from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada, Simone Goldberg, who's recently studied this. Simone, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
We got to start simple here. I read a summary of your research and it mentions sexual mindfulness. What is this exactly? How does it differ from just regular mindfulness?
Yeah, so you might have heard of the concept of just regular general mindfulness, kind of the idea of present moment awareness without judgment. So sexual mindfulness is just that, but in the sexual context. So this idea of being present and attentive and non-judgmental to yourself, but during sexual activity. So you can imagine somebody who's maybe kissing their partner and they're thinking about their laundry or their to-do list. So the practice of sexual mindfulness would be noticing that thought without judgment and just bringing themselves back to the present moment and kissing their partner.
My girlfriend made fun of me a few years ago because during a moment of intimacy, it was in April, and I all of a sudden got really freaked out about my tax return. And she uses this as a joke against me. I think we can all relate, though, the stresses of the day kind of bleeding through when we're trying to be intimate. I think that happens to a lot of us.
I agree. Yeah, it's a common concern that people face.
So why this study in mindfulness in the sexual context? What were you hoping to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our research so far has really focused on individuals, and we wanted to focus on couples because we know that, one person's cognitive state might impact their partner as well. So essentially what we did was that we sampled just almost 300 couples over a 35-day daily diary period. So it allowed us to kind of capture how, maybe how you're thinking and feeling on one day might change day to day. And so we every day in the evenings, we asked people to answer questions about whether they had sex, how satisfied they were with their sex, how much desire they had for their partner, and whether they were distressed or had any worries or concerns about their sex that day. And kind of with this 35-day period, we were able to see that on days when people were more sexually mindful, so on days when they were more present and attentive and non-judgmental during sex than their own personal average, their own usual, that they also reported better sexual well-being. And their partners reported it too, which was really cool.
It sounds cool. You mentioned presentness, attentiveness. Is there more you can say about being mindful during sex? Like, what could I do to be more mindful? Or are there techniques that people can employ?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, one of the kind of obvious ones is just get rid of the distractors that you have control of. So switch off the phone, keep it as few distractions as possible. Another thing to kind of keep in mind is the practice of observing. So if you can observe your thoughts, then you're able to bring your thoughts back to the present moment. So the practice of observing, you could describe out loud. So if you're able to kind of say what's happening in the moment to your partner, that's another method of trying to be present and attentive. But it's a practice and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think what we know from the research is that just even learning about mindfulness and exposing yourself to this idea can actually make people more mindful.
One interesting finding is that if one person is mindful, it can improve the other person's sexual satisfaction. Mm-hmm. How do you interpret a finding like that? What's going on between a partner and the other person in that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing that might be responsible here is this idea of like sexual responsiveness. So if one partner is distracted, they're not kind of able to be responsive to their partner's cues and be in tune with the moment. And so, you can imagine somebody who's in the sexual interaction and maybe they're kind of looking off into space or thinking about, is my partner thinking about my body? Is my partner, worried about their whatever's going on? And so I think just being able to kind of be in tune means that maybe they'll actually respond to their partner's needs in that moment and they might make their partner more satisfied.
Did you notice any differences between genders and how they respond to this? I'm talking about heterosexual or heteronormative couples. Like, did women respond to mindfulness better than men or vice versa?
Yeah, this was really interesting. So we found that the link between one's own sexual mindfulness and their own sexual well-being was actually, that link was stronger for women. So that is really interesting. And one thing that we thought might be going on, well, actually maybe two things. One is that women on average tend to have more distractions during sex. So it's possible that mindfulness as this kind of antidote to distractions might reduce those distractions more for women and make that link a little bit stronger. The second piece that might be going on is this mind-body connection. And so we know from the literature that men tend to have a stronger mind-body connection. They're better able to report their subjective kind of self-report is going to be of their sexual arousal is more closely tied together than women. So mindfulness is this way to kind of strengthen that mind-body connection, and that might just work better for women.
For those who experience a lot of distractions during sex, maybe worries about performance, could be worries about your own body image, could be worried about the tax return you had to get done. I'm just asking that question for a friend. How can sexual mindfulness help with these thoughts? How can we prevent them from entering our head?
Yeah, so it's not about stopping them. I think that's kind of a key piece here is like it's normal to be distracted during sex. And that can be about body image or performance or non-sexual tax returns. It's normal to be distracted. And the practice is really just about noticing that, observing that, and bringing your attention back to the moment. And that in and of itself is kind of where we see benefits for sexual well-being, not trying to stop it or, suppress your thoughts, because we know that doesn't really work.
I want to know about these sexual tax returns, but maybe that's a conversation for a different interview. Sexual mindfulness. Is this something that clinicians could be using, for example, like in couples therapy or in maybe sexual health interventions? Is this something that a couples counselor could recommend to clients based on your research?
Yes, absolutely. So we know that mindfulness-based interventions are really effective for individuals with sexual difficulties. And even some research that I've done in my lab here at the Sexuality and Wellbeing Lab looks at just 3.5 minutes of psychoeducation about the benefits of mindful sex can help individuals with their sexual well-being. And so all of these interventions involving teaching people how to observe their thoughts, describe their experiences, notice physical sensations, tune into their pleasure, and let go of these kind of negative thoughts and observe their mind. All of these mindfulness strategies really do have promise for both individuals and couples. And even just small amounts of information, just 3.5 minutes, can benefit sexual well-being.
Any other pieces of advice you might have for couples who are listening and kind of interested in this and know that when they go through their intimate routines that the thoughts creep into the head, the anxieties? Any one piece of advice for them?
Just that it's really normal and okay to be distracted during sex, and learn about mindfulness because it could be a really helpful strategy for both members of the couple.
Simone, I've enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate you going over your research and teaching me about sexual mindfulness.
Thank you so much.
Simone Goldberg is a researcher in clinical psychology from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. All right, listener, pull up a chair and let me tell you about the Last Show podcast. You can subscribe to it if you head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com, never .com. Don't ask me why. There really isn't a good answer. Lastshow.pizza. There you can find out details of our podcast, including how to subscribe, or call up your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and search David Cooper Last Show. Will pop up. On our podcast, you can catch parts of this radio show that you missed or nights that you completely couldn't tune in for. There is also some bonus podcast-only content, including last weekend we covered how to cut an onion and cry less. I know, important science news. And that's just one of the wonderful tidbits you'll hear on the podcast only. So give us a subscribe, please. Although I can't tell you what to do, I'm not your mother. Coming up after the break. What if the next generation of robots wasn't made of metal, but nanobots made of living lung cells? In just a few moments' time, we'll discuss tiny medical robots that could one day live in your body and deliver medicine right to your lungs.
Want to be part of the Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The Last Show with David Cooper, where we utilize non-linear reverse, inverse, backward thinking protocols. It sounds like this.
The future of medicine, tiny robots, nanobots in your body delivering medicine. Is that something that can happen? And can those robots be made out of lung tissue? It sounds like science fiction, but actually researchers are working on it. I'm here with biomedical engineering professor at Carnegie Mellon University, Charlie Wren, to discuss this. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David, for having me. So hello, everyone. So it's my pleasure to explain our research to you today. So let me give you a little bit of background before we dive into the robot part. So I think all of us have experienced getting cold or flu at some time in our life. So when that happens, from time to time, you get mucus accumulated in your lung. Then eventually you can cough them up and out of the mouth. The reason that happens is we have these tiny structures in our lung called cilia. They're very small. They're like 100 to 1,000 times thinner than the hair. But we have 1 billion of those in our lung. So they actually move the mucus up. So what we're doing in our research here is we're kind of transforming this cilia mechanism that move mucus into a new mechanism that move tissue itself. So what we do is we can take cells from the human lung, we can engineer a tiny tissue that's about the size of a few hundred micrometers in diameter. That's about the thickness of our hair again. So, and then we can design an aggregation process that we can precisely control the shape, the geometry of this tissue.
So you're engineering kind of living cells from lung cells, basically?
Yeah, precisely. Yes, David.
And where does medicine delivery come in? Like, how do they work? This is so fascinating, but I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, thanks. So because they're living cells, we can actually do a genetic engineering of the cells to get the cells to constantly produce the medicine we want. You can imagine this kind of a living pharmacy concept. So we don't have to take pills every day, but rather deploy a bunch of those living robots in our lung. They can produce medicine for weeks or even months.
And what sort of illnesses in the future could a tool, a robot, a living tissue bioengineered thing, what kind of medicines could it deliver?
So for example, there's one common problem in our lung when we have a lot of diseases like cystic fibrosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. There's usually this huge mucus buildup, which cause a problem in our lung, inflammation, and also prevent medicine from delivering into the underlying cells. So what we hope to do is we can deploy those robots that they can serve as a mechanical disruptor of the mucus. We can also program to express enzymes, which are proteins, can degrade the mucus. So they can really get deployed in the lung to loosen out mucus, make it easier for the mucus to be cleared from our lung.
So how close are you to actually testing these things? Could I come to your lab and see one and somehow get it into my lungs if we had approval from whatever government agency? How far along are we in engineering these things?
Well, hopefully not very far in the future. I think that the study we just published recently really laid the groundwork that we can engineer them we call them by design robots, where we can really relatively precisely control their motility patterns through the engineer process. We're in the process of making larger structures, so we have better control of it, and hopefully soon in the future we can actually start to use this robot to carry and deliver some therapeutics. So probably we're going to test them in a laboratory setting and probably in an animal setting before we move forward into a more clinically relevant setting.
And how do they move? Do they swim? Do they crawl? Do they rotate? Are they like a little, single-celled organism with like a whiptail in the back? How do you visualize the motion of this thing?
So they're like, actually, if we go to a pot of water, fresh water in the lake, you have a lot of like what we call ciliates. They're single cell cilia powered organism. So ours is slightly bigger than that. So basically what they would do in our setting right now is actually they're going to do this swirling motion on the bottom of our culture dishes. So I usually make this analogy. Imagine we're building a tiny vacuum cleaner, the automated vacuum cleaner, right? In the house we can get them to do this big surveying, clean the floor for me. Or we can say, hey, Charlie just dropped coffee by his chair, clean this area, please. So we can now program the robot to do a big screening behavior or a focused cleaning behavior. But of course, we're not cleaning the house. The robot is tiny. We're cleaning a much smaller territory.
The idea that these biobots, is that what you call them, could one day deliver medicine into my body, it really does sound like science fiction. I think it's really cool, but what's the usual response you get from people when you tell them that if they have some issues with their lungs, in the future, we could put a little bioengineered robot in you and cure you? Are people surprised by this?
Yeah, I think people are both. I think there's a mixed response. Some people are fascinated by the idea, surprised, or sometimes scared, right? So as we know, our body is so well prepared that we don't want to take random stuff from the outside. So one of the common things people are concerned about is called immune response, right? So if we have any foreign cells from another person or from another species coming to our body going to have a big response to try to get rid of it. So what's nice about this, our Agobot idea is we can actually take cells from everyone. We can actually make this robot specifically for this particular person. So I think we just came out of a pandemic several years ago. So when we do during the pandemic, many of us have taken COVID test, right? Which usually you put a cotton swab into your nose, get a test, right? So by just doing that, you actually take a bunch of your cells. Your stem cell from your lung, we can actually take those cells in theory to make those robots for you. So that becomes like tailored.
And how do you control them? Is it like a little kid with a remote control car and like a big thing in their hand with a big antenna coming out? Like, how do you control these bots, or are they autonomous?
Great question, David. Right now, they're autonomous, but we're hoping to incorporate some control mechanism. One of the mechanisms we're looking at right now is magnetic steering. So we're pretty confident we can incorporate magnetic particles into the organoid so that, when you deploy them, you can put the magnetic outside the body to remote control where the robot will go in the body.
All right, so that's where we are now. Like, looking ahead, what does your lab envision as the next step for this living robot project? Like, what would you be working on next?
So right now, what we're going to do next is kind of where we see our current limitation is. Currently, I think we're really excited about the concept, but right now, the way we manufacture them is limited to smaller robots we call them 4-unit robots up to now. So we're about to implement some more advanced manufacturing strategy so we can actually building bigger robots with much more units. So that will give us much better control. So we have a colleague asking me, hey, Charlie, how big a robot you want to make? We say, actually there is jellyfish right now swimming in the ocean. They're 1.5 meter in size. They're powered by cilia. So there's a big room we can grow. So that's where we're heading towards right now.
All right, I do have to ask, I know I kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the interview, but how soon could we see a product like this on the market to help people with lung ailments?
I think, as you pointed out earlier, there's going to be quite a process of regulatory approval because, again, we're deploying things into the human lung. But I think in the initial phase, I would say, we're probably going to do some preclinical testing, try to actually fix or help to alleviate some lung disease in animal models. I don't think that's going to be far away from us. It could be just in the coming few years. We can really demonstrate the concept in a preclinical setting. Then we can potentially pursue a clinical setting, like a clinical trial.
I'm sure some people are kind of like scared of this technology, the idea of having bioengineered nanobots in their body, that kind of thing. What do you say to anyone who's fearful, perhaps irrationally, of this kind of tech?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're being cautious from our side as well. We're taking every step as rigorous as we can. We're really try to demonstrate first this bot really can deliver benefits. We think motility really matters because the body is so complex. Whatever delivered to the lung or other parts of the body, they can easily get stuck. We really think this little propelling organism can really help us to address this big challenge. And then we want to take baby steps and then prove demonstration, safety, and efficacy. And then we hope the community, the patients will be more willing to take this going forward.
Well, Charlie, thanks for sharing your research with me. This is such a cool project. I appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you so much, David, for having me.
Charlie Wren is a biomedical engineering professor at Carnegie Mellon University. Up next, we'll look at this question. Why do girls lose interest in becoming political leaders so early, and what could we do to change that? In a few moments' time, we'll take a look at the study showing support, from teachers or parents, the role support plays in shaping children's political ambitions.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
The roots of political ambition may start earlier in your life than you'd think. There is a new study out of NYU that finds that children's belief in being supported, especially girls, can shape whether they dream of becoming leaders in the future at all. I am here with two psychology researchers who worked on this study from Princeton and Yale. Their names are Dr. Rachel Leshin and Reut Shachnai. Rachel, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And Reut, welcome as well.
Hi. Thank you.
So, why look into the roots of political ambition in children? And why look at it so young? You'd think kids like age 5, 11 wouldn't really be interested in becoming politicians.
Yeah. Around the world, women, as we all know, women are still underrepresented in political leadership, even though we know that when women lead, societies often benefit. So things like more durable peace agreements and more inclusive policies. But one key reason this gap persists is political ambition. So on average, women are less likely than men to say they want positions of political power. And as you said, what's really striking is how early this gender gap appears, not in college or adulthood, but actually in early childhood. So our research asked what's happening in childhood that might predict these gender differences in political ambition. And so we focused on two big factors. First, how children think about leaders, so what qualities they assign to leaders and whether those qualities are stereotypically masculine or feminine. So if girls picture leaders as having stereotypically masculine traits, then this can discourage them from this role. And we also looked at social support, as you mentioned, so whether girls and boys believe their families and friends would support them if they wanted to lead. And we thought that anticipating less support can hurt girls' ambition before it even fully forms. And we also studied this in both the US and China. So those are two nations that have never had a female head of state, but differ in culture and in women's political representation. So including both of these contexts help us see how cultural values and social expectations might relate to gender gaps in political ambition from a very young age.
Tell me more about this perceived support from one's family, sort of assisting them or making their ambitions more real. So can you describe that to me in simple terms?
Yeah, so what we ask children is basically whether they think their family and friends are going to help them if they were to pursue this role and whether they would like it. So this was our child-friendly way of assessing social support.
And what did you find when you asked kids that and the answer was yes?
Yeah, so we found across countries and across boys and girls that perceiving more social support, both from family and friends, so saying your family and friends were more likely to both like it, if you were to run for political office and help you to do that, was associated with more political ambition. So the kids that perceived higher social support or said they had higher social support were also those that said they had more interest in becoming a president or chairman, depending on the cultural context, and thought they would be better at it. One thing that was really interesting about this relationship was that it was stronger and more robust in girls compared to boys. So again, overall, social support was definitely a good thing when we looked at political ambition, but it seemed to matter more for girls. So that relationship was stronger or tighter for girls compared to boys in both countries, which we thought was an interesting kind of hint at one potential mechanism that could be related to disparities that Reut was talking about at the beginning.
What about other leadership traits? Are they strongly linked to young people's political ambition? For example, if I'm a really brave young kid, I'm a great public speaker, or I care a lot about my classmates or something, is that linked to my future political ambition, or is it really just this family support thing that really stands out?
That's a great question. So in this particular study, we didn't probe children's views about themselves. Instead, we probed their views about political office and what it kind of takes to be a political leader. So we asked them, does a president need to be brave? Is it okay for presidents to cry? Do presidents need to be nice, et cetera, et cetera? And we kind of look to see whether those qualities, so their perceptions of a political leader rather than their perceptions of themselves, were in turn associated with their ambition to pursue those leadership roles. And there we did not find a strong link. So we were really looking at those qualities predicting ambition as compared to social support predicting ambition. And we just found a much more overwhelmingly strong evidence for that second relationship, though what your point about children's self-views predicting their ambition is certainly an important avenue and not something that we looked at in this particular study.
Interesting. Did that particular thing that you're talking about surprise you? Were you expecting to find a link in the traits versus this link of social support? Were you surprised by the findings?
I think that this was a very exploratory study, but our initial hypothesis was based on the adult literature is that both of these factors would matter, both how you view a leader in terms of the traits they have and the social support, because there is evidence in adults that the types of traits that you associate with a certain role, like whether those are more stereotypically masculine or feminine, that really matters for adults' ambition. So we did expect to see that there are also predictors in kids, but we didn't find that. And I can say personally that I was surprised that it wasn't the case in our data, and that social support was so much more like a strong predictor than those traits. Yeah, I think I was predicting both of them.
If we want to see more, and I do, representation and more women in politics, but kids seem to sometimes think negatively that field is not for them. Based on your research, what would you tell teachers? What would you tell families so that they could really shape whether their girls end up in politics or not?
Yeah, so I think that it is really important for teachers and parents to really focus on emphasizing to young girls that if this is a path they would like to choose, then they would receive the most, utmost support, and maybe not focus as much on the types of traits they or depict them in a certain way, but really just assure them that this is something that they can envision girls doing, and that if this is a direction they would like to pursue, they would be there to help them at every step of the way.
Yeah, and I'll also jump in to say, I think that supporting both boys and girls is key here, right? I don't think it's about preferential support necessarily. I think that when we look at our plots showing the data, what's really interesting is that we see a gender gap in ambition at low levels of social support. So in the absence of support, it seems that that's really where girls' ambition suffers compared to boys. But in the presence of support, so at the high end, that gap really disappears. So I think it's just about providing high social support to both, while knowing that may be a more influential kind of lever for girls in particular.
It's an interesting finding. Anything next in your research? Anything else you want to uncover here in this area?
I think that an interesting future direction is, so our study looked at kids at one point in time, right? And we also didn't run an experiment. So what we can say based on our findings is that social support is closely linked to political ambition. So children who expect more support also tend to show more interest in political leadership. So this is a correlational finding, but we don't have causal findings whether social support causally shapes children's political ambition. So a follow-up study could experimentally increase perceived social support and also follow children over time to determine whether social support drives these differences and how long the effects last.
Well, Reut, thank you for talking to me and sharing this research with me. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And Rachel, you as well.
Thanks. Dr.
Rachel Leshin and Reut Shachnai are psychology researchers at Princeton and Yale. Coming up next, a sensitive topic, but an important one. We'll talk about drink tampering and why so many victims of it stay silent. There are things that can be done to make going out safer for everyone, and that's what we'll chat about up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Spiking when someone's drink, food, even vape is secretly drugged. It's a hidden and serious problem, and most victims never speak out. So we're going to have a conversation about how this happens, why it's ignored, and what needs to change here with Dawn Dines, the founder and CEO of Stamp Out Spiking. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, David. Thanks for having me on such a serious issue as well.
I'm happy to discuss it. There's a report out of Cardiff in Wales in the UK that shows around 10% of women and 5% of men have experienced this. For people who don't realize how common it is, how big a problem are we talking about here?
Well, do you know what? Well, I've been campaigning for over 2 decades now, and I know that spiking has been affecting men and women. We've got this sort of idea that it just happens to women. And it doesn't. It happens to men and boys as well. And it's a hugely underreported crime. It's like one of those crimes that people are embarrassed or ashamed about because they go for a night out, they're having a brilliant time, and then some idiot comes and puts mind-rendering drugs into your system, and then you lose control. You've got no sort of way of getting any memory back. You become compliant. You can't put up a fight. And then some terrible things obviously can happen to you. And quite a few of the victims that I've spoken to are like, they feel really ashamed and really embarrassed. And when they go and try and report it to the police are like, well, where were you? What happened? Who was it? What did they look like? And, you've got none of those details because they've drugged you.
You've described it as sort of an invisible crime. What makes it so hard for us to see? I don't know, both literally and also I think socially is important too.
Well, I think because it can be so easily done, like spiking takes a second to do. And, if you and me were out tonight and we were partying and somebody came over and said, oh, hi, can we just take a picture? And they take your mind away for a second so you're not looking at your drink. Someone can easily slip something into your drink. They can try and say, oh, you want to try a bit of my raspberry vape? So, because there's different flavors, and here in the UK, vaping's quite a sociable thing. So we're not allowed to vape in the bars anymore. So everybody's outside in an area, and they're trying to make it like a sociable thing to do, to share vapes. And, if somebody offers to buy you a drink, obviously go to the bar with them so you're not leaving that drink unattended at any time. So there's little tips that you can sort of do when you're going out partying, just to try and safeguard yourself, really.
And why don't people know that this happens more? Why isn't this widely reported? I feel like I heard a lot about it when I was in university, and as an adult, no one really discusses it, but I know it's happening.
Oh, David, do you know what? I've questioned myself so many times about this. I'm like, why is it a taboo subject? Why is everybody brushing this under the carpet? And to be honest with you, it's not a nice subject, And I know, like we've discussed on your shows, sometimes you have really good fun and have a good laugh, and that's my personality too. But when we're talking about something so disgusting as drink spiking, then we have to talk about this horrible side of it, where people have put drugs into your system. They take you off. They might rape you, sexually assault you. They might bribe you. They're going to be wanting to do something to you that you would never normally give them permission to do so. So it's quite a dark and horrible subject, to be honest with you. And and why are people doing this? Why are they taking advantage of people? Why are they not getting consent? If it's for sexual assault, obviously we know that reason why. But we've also, across the UK, and we're seeing this more on a global scale now, it could be for trying to get you to go to the bank, so you put in your ATM card and take money. It could be for bribery reasons. There's lots of horrible reasons why perpetrators are doing these horrid crimes.
Let's talk about how survivors are treated, like even by police or emergency services.
Well, historically, when I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of male and female victims, until about 3 or 4 years ago, it was never taken seriously. The police were always accusing people of having too much to drink. When people were going to hospitals, you had a condescending nurse saying, "Oh, my, haven't we had a lot to drink?" Or, it makes us really angry when we have recreational drug users come in when this is supposed to be for accident and emergencies. And some of the victims hold on a minute, I've been out, I had one glass of wine, and then suddenly they're wetting themselves, being violently sick, going in and out of consciousness. And it's well, we need mass education, not just for our emergency services. We need our hospitals to understand, our ambulance service, bar staff, door security. This is no one emergency service can deal with these crimes. It needs to be everybody working together. And that's what we managed to do in Westminster last week. We had a round table. We had ministers present. We had taxi companies. We had bar staff, we had door security, everybody who needs to have an invested interest for public safety.
So it's got to come from the bars. It's got to come from emergency services. Does it have to come from us and our attitudes towards it as well?
For sure. It really does. And for any of your listeners out there today that, have either been affected by this crime or who want to make a difference, please get hold of us at Stamp Out Spiking. We're a global charity. We've got lots of different things that we can offer. We've got protective drink covers. We've got digital assets that people can put up in their bars, posters. There's loads of stuff now that people can be being proactive instead of going, "Oh no, these horrible crimes are taking place." No, let's safeguard future generations. Let's get these stop tops and spikies across all the bars. Let's warn people. Let's try and get our ambulance service to get in contact with Stamp Out Spiking, and we can show them what victims act like, what they look like. So let's give people a chance to be able to safeguard themselves.
I was reading about this report, and it was saying how the UK government doesn't make spiking a specific criminal offense yet. My understanding is that's going to change. Do you think something like that can make a difference in wherever someone lives? Like if the government makes it a specific crime to target?
Definitely. And, we've been working across, I've been and met some senators in Massachusetts. Like, I'm starting to make inroads in Australia. I've met with some senators over there. So it's really starting to gather momentum now. And this is like a movement, I know I'm just one girl, but I'm one girl who's determined, who's now got a team behind her. And now we're getting people starting to look at us going, we want to join that movement. So it's brilliant. It's so good that people are now joining forces with us going, we don't want that to happen to my grandchild. I don't want that to happen to my son or my wife. So, yeah, brilliant.
Is there something that everyday people can do to help to make nights safer for people going out to bars and stuff like this?
Yes, they can. They can become a member of Stamp Out Spiking. Then that can share all the assets across. They can just share what they've heard today with their neighbor, with their loved ones. Like anybody who's listening to this, like if you know somebody who loves to go out and party, or even if someone who just goes out once a year for a Christmas drink, just make them aware that there's people out there that are taking advantage of them so that they can secure themselves and make sure that you got somebody on Shark Watch. Like, when you go out, have one person who's not drinking. They can keep an eye out for all of you. There's different things you can add to your phones now to make sure that you're kept safe.
Well, Dawn, thank you. And I think the more we talk about this, the less of a stigma it'll become and hopefully make things better and safer for everyone. Dawn Dines is the founder and CEO of Stamp Out Spiking. Dawn, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Up next, it was Halloween. I went line dancing, and our foreign correspondent, Tony Five in London, England, had a friend experience something absolutely horrifying. Like, not in a good way, a serious way. So that's what we'll discuss after the break. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show. I am David Cooper, and it's not the first show, it's not the second show, but it definitely is the last show. And in Halloween weekend news that could scare the living daylights out of you, I went line dancing. And we are joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five, who's an expert in line dancing. He's in London, England, the line dancing capital of the world, probably. Tony, welcome to the show.
David, I am like the castle in chess. I know the forward line, I know the sideline, David, and that's the only way I move, my friend. How are you? How was line dancing?
It was odd. Do you know what that is? It's like country music, everyone kind of dancing and like moving around, tapping their feet and moving their arms and doing a 90-degree turn every 20 seconds in unison, like out of a Shania Twain music video.
I want to say like Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yeah. Or like Achy Breaky Heart,
Yes.
It was hard. I couldn't follow it. There was like 20 moves. And my girlfriend kept accusing me of being a bad sport. And I'm like, no, I am trying, but I keep getting bumped into because it's like 90 degrees to the left, 90 degrees to the right. I don't know what's happening, but you know what? It was fun to get out of my comfort zone, I got to say.
Was it a hoedown you went to? Is that what you call a hoedown?
More or less. It was like a little country music show. I'd say 50% of the people were dressed up like cowboys, myself included. Mm-hmm. And then 50% were dressed up in proper Halloween costumes.
Wow. Okay, so it was an actual Halloween hoedown. Good Lord, America's amazing. It's a great place to live, isn't it?
It is a place to live, that's for sure.
Was it a busy thing? Did you have a lot of stuff, a lot of people there?
Yeah, we went with 4 or 5 friends. It was kind of packed. The dance floor was a little too busy, and I had a lot of fun, and I'd been complaining and scared about dancing for weeks now.
Halloween's a big thing for you guys over the Atlantic, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. For some adults who go to like adult parties where they get dressed up, that's not really my thing. But yeah, for kids, it's huge. I just didn't answer the door when kids rang the doorbell because that's the kind of person I am. I didn't have any candy. What was I going to do? Give them apples? You can't give kids apples.
I don't know. Do you not give like crystal meth to people?
No, they generally frown upon that. It is varying degrees of unethical and illegal. So that is not a thing that happens here. Before we ask you what you did over the weekend, I just want to give a little content warning for sensitive listeners. Tony's weekend story involves a little bit of violence.
It does.
So sensitive listeners, parents with children, you'll want to be advised. Now, Tony, what happened to you this weekend?
Two things happened. So the first one, not so bad. The second one, very bad, and made world news, David. So first time I was in a restaurant. I was in a rodizio, a Brazilian restaurant where they cut meat for you on the table. It was wonderful. I went with some friends.
That's nice stuff, huh?
It was an amazing restaurant, beautiful restaurant. After the meal's finished, we're just waiting for the dessert, which dessert is grilled pineapple, David. It is incredible. A guy stands kind of next to me, maybe 45 degrees to me, and just face plants, collapses. He falls on me. I managed, we were quite reactive, me and my friend opposite. He grabbed his head and I grabbed his body. We caught him. And he was a big guy, a big bald guy. And had he fallen and hit his head on the corner of a wooden table, that would have been a really nasty injury. But it seemed like this guy was sort of having a fit. So we put him in a recovery position and laid him on the floor. Ambulance came. Great. So a bit of a weird dinner. We didn't get anything free, by the way. And weirdly, the people carving meat sort of walked around him while he was laid on the floor. It was a very strange situation. But he was fine. His wife came and looked after him. Then it got worse. So this is what David was talking about, the content warning. I got in the car and my friend, is a very, very good friend of mine, called me up in a major panic. His girlfriend, who I know as well, was on a train where there was a knife-wielding man randomly stabbing people on a train.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and this has made world news because this guy, he got on a train in a place called Peterborough, which was heading towards London, the capital, and he basically did a rampage. He pulled out a knife and he stabbed people indiscriminately. And unfortunately, she came eye to eye with this guy. I'm talking less than a metre, and he had his knife up and about to stab her in the chest, essentially. And a good citizen, a hero, whatever you want to call him, he stood in the way and he got slashed and he got stabbed in the back or whatever. And the guy moved on. And so this girl, we'll call her M just for the sake of it. So M basically looked after him, tourniqueted him, took him to the end of the train. And then the police, obviously, and the ambulance came and looked after him. But then armed police came down and they found him and they tasered him. There was a lot of things going on. It was major news in England.
I know people got hurt. Did anyone die?
No. So currently, thank God, no one's died. There is one in critical care but stable. It's really strange. So what I was going to talk about is very interesting. If you watched the news live, like I think you call them the ticker tapes down the bottom, which updates you sort of every second, right? So now in this day and age, everything's you can find the news on Twitter or on X or whatever you want to call it. And obviously I have a friend who's actually in the middle of it. And she's telling me about what this guy looked like and his background and stuff. But the news in the UK deliberately did not divulge the look of this guy, anything about him, because England, the UK, Europe, I guess the world is like really on a tightrope, right? And they didn't want to set off some sort of revenge attack. And it was so surreal. You could see that reporters, all the media outlets weren't saying what he was. And it did turn out to be a black guy who was British born. So he's a British born black man and who obviously must have some sort of mental health problems. And I'm not saying anything that's not on the world news at the moment. He'd committed some crimes with this knife previously, and they're all linking him up.
Okay, your friend, she was in a bit of a state and she came over to your house?
My friend, she's 18 years old. This girl is absolutely traumatized. Where people were running out, she's got bruises all over her because people trampled on her and ran out. And she's sort of sitting there yesterday saying she'll never get on public transport again, a bus or a train. And she's been comforted very highly by her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's amazing. He's one of my best friends and he's looking after her. But, she is heavily traumatized. She'd probably need a lot of counselling, especially coming eye to eye and seeing that amount of blood and seeing somebody get physically hurt. I mean, it's one thing to see it in films, right? And people always imagine they'd react like they would in a film. But I think viscerally, if you've seen somebody being in a fight or injured, it's a much different feeling. I've seen it happen. I've been in fights. I've seen it when people have been hurt and worse. And it's a very different feeling.
Sure, I can imagine. I mean, that's fiction versus reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing prepares you for it. Nothing prepares you for what you do. There are lots of people who talk a big game. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But actually, one guy did. He stepped up and he stood in front of this girl. And they're saying that the train driver was an absolute hero as well because he diverted a train. There are lots of protocols when it comes to driving a high-speed train, right? You can't just stop in the middle of nowhere because what would you do? So he went to the nearest station and all the counter-terrorist police, armed response police, because at the moment, nobody knows what's going on. They're all these 911 calls saying that there's somebody on a train, right? You don't know whether it's one person or two people, but there's a lot of things happening at the moment that I will fill you in, which will be an interesting topic.
For another time. Well, thanks for sharing what happened on your weekend. Awful. I'm glad no one was killed, but it's absolutely terrible, and I'm sorry your friend's girlfriend went through that.
It is, and obviously, and I always tell people, the safest time to ever travel was the day after 9/11, and today, the day after this, is probably the safest time to travel. There is armed police everywhere on every train station just to stop copycats, and I don't think it should put people off. I don't think people should be scared because this is a day of life, right? This is a way of life at the moment.
That's the scary and sad part. Tony Five, our foreign correspondent in London, England, thanks for being here, my friend.
David, not always funny, but always real, my friend, always real.
That's a wrap on the night. That was the last show. I mean, we'll be back tomorrow, so it's not the last show. It just is the last. That's the name of the show. And don't forget, we've got a podcast. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com for more details. And please do subscribe. We got some great stuff on that podcast. You can even catch up on the parts of this show that you missed. I mean, the radio show. You can catch the radio show parts you missed on the podcast. I'm David Cooper. This was The Last Show.